It is time. Thursday has arrived. We've got college football playoff action starting tonight, of course, with Notre Dame matching up against Penn State. Appreciate you stopping by here at the Voice of College Football. Best discussion, debate, and analysis is right here all the time, every time, with me, with you, with the discussion that you provide in the chat. We do appreciate your support and all that you do here at the Voice of College Football. All right, we've got a call-in line that's listed in the chat. We've got Bill Bender of the Sporting News stopping by at approximately 12:15 Eastern Time. I will certainly take a call before Bill and after Bill jumps on the line for 15 or 20 minutes. So this is a Bill Bender guest appearance coming up in a few minutes, but it's also a call-in show for us to talk about the college football playoffs and specifically tonight's game between Notre Dame and Penn State. Disputed National Champions, great book. Please give it a look. The link's in the description section down below. Disputed National Champions, a reset of the 1990s and a look ahead. It's a historic book and a futuristic book at the same time. How about that? Disputed National Champions, the link's in the description section down below. You're a college football junkie. You're a nerd. You will love it. Saw some interesting and ignorant takes on Notre Dame football today that I may or may not take off on in a video. We will try to run down the original copy of the Golick guys. I don't know what they call their show. I didn't know that they had a show. So it's Mike Golick, who, of course, was the Notre Dame defensive lineman, played in the NFL with the Eagles, had the show with Mike and Mike. Excellent radio show, one of the best that's ever been on sports radio. I don't know what he's been doing ever since. And then he's got a son who's done some funny stuff at ESPN. I've lost track of him. I don't know what he's doing. I guess they're doing a show together. I was unaware of this until maybe an hour ago, and I saw a clip on Twitter, and it was posted by our buddy George on Renegade Report. And I'll have to look a little bit further into it, but I believe it was a defense for Notre Dame not being in a conference. Here's the deal with Notre Dame not being in a conference. And I think Paul Feinbaum was obliterating Notre Dame. And of course, the Golicks were defending Notre Dame. They both played at Notre Dame. Of course, you would expect. Will we ever have somebody who played at a particular school in a particular program that also takes shots at that program? That would be exceptional if we ever saw that happen. Then we would truly know that particular commentator, that particular analyst was actually unbiased through and through. If they would take shots at their own school, their own program. I don't see that happening. Maybe it does. I don't watch that much out there. As I've told you guys on a regular basis, I don't watch much that's out there. I don't watch anybody's show start to finish. I don't watch anybody's show for more than the clips that are out there. That's where I take in some of the sports media, is because I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, and many of you actually hit me up in the DMs and deliver these clips to me to say, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Look at this stupid thing. You should respond to this. And then I get the 12 seconds or the 90 seconds of Paul Feinbaum. I can't even think of anybody else, Kirk Herbstreit or whomever else, Joe Klatt or Matt Berry, who I've heard say some things recently. But again, it's usually that 15 or 20 seconds. I don't want to take it out of context. And I don't have the patience nor the tolerance to sit through these shows. I truly don't. I just don't. I don't have the patience for it. I would have as a 15-year-old, 25-year-old, even 35-year-old of listening to college football discussion all the time. But I love you guys being here. So I understand that's a double standard. I totally get it. And we do appreciate you being here. Totally understand it's a double standard because it just bores me to death. Sandra says, let's go. Scott says, Ohio. I assume Scott's a big Bobcats fan. The Ohio University Bobcats won a bowl game against Jacksonville State. Good for them. Or maybe that was an OHIO. I don't know what that was there. Bill Bender standing by to talk Notre Dame and Penn State. We'll also talk Ohio State and Texas. Notre Dame's a 1.5-point favorite at the Orange Bowl against Penn State. The last time the two teams played was in 2007. Please check out the video we posted where we put into context these powerhouse blue blood, big brand universities, Ohio State against Texas, Notre Dame against Penn State. Then I get the comments below, what's this have to do with 2025? And I clearly state on the videos, nothing. So we've got analysis, Penn State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Texas, all over the place. It's all over the place. Go to the Ohio State channel, video after video after video, live stream. Texas channel, same thing. Our Big Ten channel, our Penn State discussions, Marty Leap, Rivals, and of course, Notre Dame. We talked to Nick Sheplowski of Notre Dame SI and other content. It's all over the place. We had a great discussion with Chris Drew from Menace to Sports the other day, talking about the CFP for over an hour, like 75 minutes with Chris Drew. I am going to guess that we've got more college football playoff preview and breakdown content here than anywhere. Okay, so I just produced 2 pieces that were about the all-time programs and their recent history and how they match up in regards to different metrics like major bowl wins and winning percentage and those things. It was a fun video. I love doing it. And then I have people questioning why I'm doing it because it doesn't pertain to this week's game. I know that. What do we know about Notre Dame? I've made the comment, and I'm sure I'm going to open up the conversation with Bill Bender here in a few minutes to say these two teams, meaning Penn State and Notre Dame, they look like mirror images of each other. So who's better at what they do? Who's better at what they both do? What do they both do? They've got excellent run blocking offensive lines. They have 2 running backs, a running back tandem for each team that is exceptional. 2 of the best in the nation in the running back room. Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, and Aeneas Williams as well, the third back for Notre Dame, if called upon. And on the Penn State side, of course, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. Katron Allen, my personal favorite to watch run the football. Price and Love, I would have to watch them a little bit more. Not that I don't watch a lot of Notre Dame football, but I haven't really keyed on what the differences between the two are. They seem like similar backs. Just, hey, what can't they do? They're not power backs. They're not speed backs. They're both backs. They do it all. Nick Singleton's clearly the burner for Penn State, and Katron Allen is definitely the pounder. Man, did he run hard and run well against Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. When he gets ahead of steam, look out. Katron Allen is exceptional. So I am going to delve in with Bill Bender here from the Sporting News on exactly what I'm started on. Bill, how you doing today?
Hey, Mark, how's it going?
We do appreciate you being here.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, busy day, as you can imagine, but glad to fit you guys in today and get ready for these 2 semifinals.
Awesome. You got about 15 or 20 with us?
Yeah, that's fine.
Bill, when I look at these 2 teams, and just to let you know, we're live right now. So okay. Just want to let you know on that note, I'm looking at the two same teams, basically, like they're mirror images of each other in regards to stout defense, exceptional front fours, NFL players all over the defense, and specifically, secondary play, stout offensive lines, want to run the ball, tandem of running backs that are probably top 3 to 5 in the nation in terms of a running back room, not exceptional wide receiver play. Only difference I can draw is much different quarterbacks. Riley Leonard, the runner, Drew Aller, the prototypical NFL future quarterback. Your thoughts about Notre Dame and Penn State and how they size up?
Oh, I mean, you kind of laid it out about the same way I feel. I mean, these are identical teams in a lot of ways. Penn State's going to want to pound the rock, and in their 2 playoff games, they've ran it an average of 40 times for 5 yards a carry. They would do that all night tonight if they could. I don't think they will. You'll need Drew Aller to make a couple splash plays in the passing game, which they're more capable of throwing the ball down the field than Notre Dame. I think that's one difference. But Notre Dame has Riley Leonard, and then talking to Bobby Carpenter about him yesterday, we kind of came up with he's kind of like a fullback. He's basically the fullback in this rushing attack that has 3 guys that average more than 6 yards per carry at running back. So it will be a handful of passing plays and maybe 1 or 2 big runs that decide this game tonight.
Is Drew Aller as improved as I think he is, which means that starting from the time that I saw him for the first time on Fox on a Thursday night in week 1 against Purdue, when he was just given a couple series against Purdue in relief of Sean Clifford, the arm talent was obvious. Last year, it seemed in 2023 is a bit skittish. And I know that though people point to the Ohio State and Michigan games, and it was kind of difficult to assess, okay, how much was he to blame versus the difficulty in dealing with 2 elite defenses by the other players on the team. But he just seems more in charge, more confident, more decisive. All of that has amped up for him this year.
Yeah, and the big test now is how does he play against a big-time team? That's been the struggle. You look at his completion percentage in the 2 Ohio State games, the Michigan game, the Oregon game, 0-4 in those games, and his completion percentage is right around 50%. So here's another chance to beat one of those teams. And it's not just James Franklin and Drew Aller. I mean, it's the whole team, but we'll find out. I thought he played very well against Boise State, and, that's Boise State, who they should have beat. But to take those shots down the field with Amari Evans, has a very good connection with Tyler Warren, and Tyler Warren's the one guy in this game that makes probably more of a difference than anybody else. Somewhere like around a 75% completion percentage on passes of 10 yards or less. So when you have that in your offense, you're going to use it.
Boise State completed a touchdown pass that would have made it 24-21. It was taken off the board. There was a hands to the face call against one of their offensive guards. And then the interception came, and then Penn State separated from there. I thought that the 2 teams were rather close. I know that it didn't show on the scoreboard. What was your takeaway from that game? Because I don't think that Penn State separated in my eyes.
I thought they did a little bit in the first half, that, you were watching 2 different teams, but once Boise State settled in and, had to play from behind, they did throw the ball well. Penn State was a different team with Abdul Carter off the field. And that's obviously a huge question mark. Sounds like he's going to try to play, but how effective will he be? I mean, that's a big question. But to your point, I mean, I was saying this as an Ohio alum. There's not a group of 5 person that wouldn't have taken what Boise State was in heading into the fourth quarter. Down, like you said, touchdown off the board. I believe they had a field goal to make it they were kicking a field goal to make it a 7-point game, and it didn't go. So I would take that, and I think a lot of people would. But, Penn State gets the big play in the running game from Singleton after, and it was all she wrote after that.
Bill, you mentioned Abdul Carter, and since James Franklin has gotten to a place on the defensive side in regards to recruiting, this Penn State outfit has been just exceptional in terms of moving players into the NFL draft. So for some of the best defenses in the country, if they lost their best guy, the second, the third, the fourth guy, they're right there, and it's a big loss, but it's sustainable. Abdul Carter is just, I think there's a gap there. He's special. Look at the stat sheet. He's just off the charts in regards to tackles for loss and sacks. Wow, that would be a huge loss, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about a guy that had 10 sacks, 9 hits on the quarterback, 39 hurries, you're going to, Danny Denise Sutton, they have him, but he's not Abdul Carter. So I think it's just, again, I think he's going to play. I just am curious to see how effective he is. We did this with, I think, one that stood out a couple years ago. Remember Chase Winovich for Michigan? He played in that Ohio State game, and he wasn't who he could have been in that game. Now, that's not the reason Michigan lost that game. They lost because they gave up 62 points that day. But that kind of impact player on the defense, yeah, it's going to be different if he doesn't play. Notre Dame had enough depth on their end to replace Riley Mills. And it definitely looked like they were fine in the middle and the interior. But Abdul Carter's a guy that on 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 6, he can change the game. So we'll see how effective he is.
In terms of the Penn State narrative and where this program stands, in a sense, Notre Dame had its breakthrough game last round against Georgia. Hadn't won a major bowl game in forever. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago, and it's been riding on them ever since. 0-10. They break through against what's arguably the best program in the country. Penn State's taking care of business. That's all they could do against Boise State and SMU. Is this the one that shows, okay, this one's needed to break through against the elite tier?
Well, I mean, I call him about James Franklin up at the site. I talked to Adam Brenneman about him this week, and the validation's kind of already happened in a lot of Penn State fans' opinion. Yes, he's not beating Ohio State, and the top 5 struggles are very real, but the opportunity to silence that is here. I mean, this is basically they got their 4-team playoff appearance, in my opinion. They struggled to get there. This is a 4-team playoff. This means they're one of the 4 best teams. And that's kind of like, if we were doing this like we did with men's basketball, we would say, okay, they're a Final Four team. They got, they hang that banner in the arenas, and Penn State finally got to that stage. So what they do with it is very interesting. They have an opportunity here. The fact that it's a 1-point spread suggests it's a coin flip game. And I'm having a hard time flipping that coin, honestly. And then again, Brenneman brought this up. He's like, when you play top 5 teams, a lot of guys lose to those guys. And Ohio State and Michigan simply had better teams in a lot of those games.
Yeah, let's understand. You bring up a great point about the top 5 record, because let's understand the math involved, folks. So if your record is whatever, fill in the blank, against top 5 teams, the best you're going to be is another top 5 team. So it's reasonable to think that you split those games. And then there are other times when you're number 14 in the country and you're playing a top 5 team, you're probably going to lose most of those games. So really nobody has, albeit maybe Nick Saban, if we would start digging through his top 5 matchups, is going to have a great record against top 5 teams. So I don't think people understand the math there, that they expect to see, this guy should be 12-3 against top 5 teams. It's just not mathematically feasible.
I think 50-50 is really good in that situation, for the most part. I mean, Nick Saban kind of spoiled it for everybody. I believe he's 666.7%, 2 out of 3 essentially for his career, which is incredible. And Kirby's pretty good. I think Kirby's up to something like that as well. But those are the very best coaches ever, for James Franklin. When you're going up against top 5 schools like that, it's very tough. I have a spreadsheet. I could try to pull it up real quick with all the Ohio State guys' records in that situation. Let me see.
I would guess Urban Meyer's is pretty good. I don't believe Urban Meyer lost a game at Ohio State as an underdog, which is amazing. I think it was only like 7 games, but he won them all.
Yeah, and they don't lose much. So
they only lost 9.
Right, and I know Ryan Day's record versus top 10 opponents is another one that gets. Here, I'm still trying to pull it up. Give me 2 seconds. I can tell you all these records. Here, hold on. Okay, so I got it. Look, live typing. So against top 10 opponents, Jim Tressel was 10-8, and then against top 5, he was 4-8. Urban Meyer 13-4 against the top 10. Here's where he's a separator: 6-2 against top 5 teams at Ohio State. So, yeah, Urban Meyer was pretty. But what happened with Urban Meyer was you would lose that Purdue game or that Iowa game, and Ryan Day doesn't do that. He's never lost. Well, other than Michigan, I suppose, but that's a rivalry game, a little bit different. So, to your point, I mean, all of these coaches, I think one of the interesting narratives about this playoff is one of these guys is going to join the exclusive fraternity of national championship coaches, whether it's Day or Sark or Franklin or Freeman. There's only 2 active coaches with national titles, Kirby and Dabo. And that's shocking to me, right? Like not too long ago, we had like 10 guys in the sport that had a national title.
Yeah, and I'm sure not surprising you with this list, and I won't try to recollect it, but I wrote it down a few months ago of all the coaches that have left college football just in like the last 5 years. And it's astounding the wealth of championships and pedigree and resume that has left the game just in the last 5 years.
Yeah, and then when you have Saban gone or even Jim Harbaugh, he wins a national title and leaves. There's way more coaches in the NFL with Super Bowls than there are, I guess Belichick brings a lot of Super Bowls with him to the college game, but it is very interesting that we're looking to find that elite coach to challenge. I think it's Kirby still, the consistency with which they've been able to do that, but there's opportunities here. There's an opportunity for Ryan Day, not only to silence the critics, but to get a national title. And when you have that at Ohio State, it buys you a lot of time. Jim Tressel got his in year 2, right? These. Urban, what year was Urban? Was he 2 or 3? Year 3, right?
He was 3, yes.
And Jim was 2.
2.
And you get basically a decade with that. So, I mean, for Ryan Day, other than the Michigan thing, he would buy a lot. Sark, same deal. A guy that's climbed through it. Franklin definitely worked toward this. And then Freeman would be the hottest coach in America if they win one. Like, regardless of level, I think.
Yeah, he's been so impressive in regards to, obviously, Notre Dame saw something that I'm going to credit them with, seeing that and not saying we need the hard and fast answer here in the guy that's got experience. And they probably knew that they would, have to go through a little adversity, some bumps in the road, and that he would have to find his way a little bit, which I think is manifested itself in Marshall and Stanford and some of these games the first few years. But they saw probably more clearly what a lot of us saw, that this guy is a born or maybe developed leader of men, just a strong visionary, connects with the players, just a great leader of a football program.
Yeah, and that's showed up, and I wrote the comparisons to Jim Tressel a little bit, and we'll probably dig into that more if they win this game, because obviously the Ohio State connection is there, but they win with defense, they win with special teams, they win with, you could see the way that he coaches his players on the sideline. It's a balance between being even keel, and he gets fired up on occasion, but very vocal and outstanding football coach to this point in his career with Notre Dame. I go back to when he got the job. They did that video where they showed him, and you saw how wild the players went. And I don't think that was contrived. I really feel like they felt that way. They probably didn't know at the time. And then once they figure out it's Marcus Freeman, very happy about it. And I think that's continued to show up in South Bend.
I am 8-0 picking these playoff games. Now, I'm not bragging here because I'm only 4-4 against the spread, and that's what everyone cares about, is actually picking them against the spread. But I bring that up to say, is there anything in this playoff thus far through the first 2 rounds that has surprised you? I guess Arizona State playing as well against Texas as they did, which if they had different uniforms on, I would have come out of that regulation and said, well, and I would have pointed at Arizona State is the better football team. They've played better. That would be the one surprise for me.
Yeah. I think I went 0-4 against the spread last round, but I missed the 2 games straight up that you and I talked about when this thing started. And I said they would make or break what you think is going to happen. I did pick Oregon. Didn't love it. And then really didn't love it after about the first 5 minutes of the game. And I did pick Georgia. I still thought Georgia, had they not had the 10-point swing at the end of the half, and I know that's well, duh. But no, I thought they competed in that game. They hung in that game with a backup quarterback. I actually think Gunnar Stockton wasn't the problem. He played pretty well. Took 2 sacks that were a result of not playing a lot of football. But other than that, he played well. And I Georgia had a chance to win the game. So to answer your question, no, it didn't surprise me that those teams won, that Ohio State. I think it actually surprised me that Ohio State was up 34-0 in the Rose Bowl. That would probably be my biggest surprise to this point, that they, in a rematch, just treated Oregon like Mike Tyson did. I saw Dan Wetzel. I can't take credit for that. Wetzel has made that comparison a few times. They treated him like Leon Spinks.
There you go. Absolutely.
Is it Leon Spinks? I hope I got that right.
Or it might have been Michael Spinks.
Michael
at that
Spinks.
Point. Leon's son, I believe it was. Michael Spinks.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I want to get that right. But yeah, that's who they treated Oregon like, no doubt. They knocked them out really quickly.
Leon Spinks gained his fame defeating Muhammad Ali, and then Ali got the rematch win in New Orleans. There we go.
I love doing podcasts with you because as soon as I make a mistake, and I say this in very genuine fashion, like you'll catch it, and that's good because we want this thing to be correct in all fashion. So yeah, I definitely like that.
Well, we appreciate Bill Bender here from the Sporting News, and the insight and the perspective is obvious. So catch Bill's work at the Sporting News. We'll bring up the banner here in just a second. So it's an easy find both on X with the Sporting News, but more specifically, Bill's X handle there. Bill Bender 92. Boy, I lost track where I was going next.
That's
Notre Dame, Penn State. Oh, the Ohio State, Oregon. You picking Oregon to me made sense. I still believe this Ohio State team is the best team in the country. And I picked them to win the national championship at the beginning of the year. So I don't like to go against my original prediction. But other than that, I rewatched the first game about a day before the Rose Bowl game, and I saw the same thing you did. I thought, you had your list of items to say, these are the reasons why Ohio State should win and didn't play well at Oregon. Will Howard slid too late. Jeremiah Smith shouldn't have been called. They had the squib kick go against, this is what went against them. But then these are the things that went against Oregon, and they seemed more substantial. Like they got Jordan Birch back. Right. Ohio State's offensive line is more susceptible. So I was in your camp in regards to Oregon looks like the better team going into this situation.
Yeah, but Ohio State right off the go, throwing the ball down the field. 3 plays in, they run that beautiful play to Jeremiah Smith, and it just got like Will Howard's confidence throwing the football down the field has been amazing. Now, opportunity to look wrong this week. I think Ohio State's going to win this football game, and I actually do think they'll cover, but it will not be easy against Texas. Texas, if they survive the first quarter, they have 12. There are 32 5-star guys on the football field. Not on the field at the same time, obviously. Some of these guys are freshmen, but these rosters are stacked. And Texas has guys on defense. It's just Texas hasn't been – Ohio State's been out of this world the first 2 games. I wonder if there's some regression. And Texas has just been so inconsistent in spots. But like you said, there are spots in that Arizona State game where you're like, man, this team's the best team in the country. And then that team disappears for about a quarter and a half.
Yeah, Bill Bender here from the Sporting News breaking down college football for us. I don't know if you buy into these kind of conversations. I think they're interesting, but overblown. But it's part of what we do and what's out there on social media in regards to which coach needs this the most.
Right. All of them need it. But I would say I actually went the other way. I said Ryan Day probably needs it the least now in some ways because they've won the 2 games. He is the one that would benefit the most because I think he's the one that's earned it. He's been in a championship game. He's been in the playoff. He's earned his way to this spot the most. Sark has 1 playoff appearance. Freeman and Franklin, none yet. But I think some of the pressure's off Ryan Day. Like, I just don't see an avenue where they're firing him no matter what happens against Texas. So, not really. Sark, there's probably a little bit of pressure. You are at Texas. This is his 2nd straight playoff appearance. You've had to manage the Quinn because the first thing they say if he loses is why didn't Arch play? That's going to happen. It's as ridiculous as that is. And then the other 2, I think Franklin and Freeman have got to a point where even if they lose, their fan bases aren't going to be that mad, if that makes sense. So maybe I'm backtracking a little bit. It probably is Ryan Day, but again, like he's the most accomplished of these coaches in terms of who's here. So it's kind of that's always a tough question to answer.
To me, it's clearly Day.
Yep.
I just think Marcus Freeman has the biggest. He's in the honeymoon phase still, and people are just so happy to have him as a Notre Dame fan over Brian Kelly, and the future looks bright, and everything's headed in the right direction, and the Georgia win is far beyond anything that they've done in a long time, and all that. James Franklin seems to be, again, he's exceeded where he's been in the past, whether that's just by the pure format changing or Penn State's actually better. Ryan Day, it just seems like the expectations at Ohio State are a notch above the other two. Texas is getting back to that place, of course. So it just seems like, and he's already had his 2019 loss to Clemson and his national title loss and the Georgia game, and it would just be more of the same.
Right. Yeah. And I get that, but they are, and to your point, I think something that adds to that is the fact that they've played so well to the point now they're expected to win it again.
They are.
Right? Like 2 weeks ago, we weren't having this conversation, but after watching the Oregon and Tennessee games, I believe Texas was the betting favorite after the first round. And now that's changed to Ohio State, and they are an overwhelming favorite to win it. And, I just keep throwing caution into that because Texas has good players. Texas has a very good defense. I still can't get Texas beating Michigan out of my head. I was there, and Michigan had all their guys on the field. Every one of they had Will Johnson on the field, and Texas just slammed them in Ann Arbor. So, I mean, they've got a roster that's capable of beating Ohio State. I just don't know if they can. And I guess that's what makes it so interesting. And I don't know what impact, if we've talked about this already, I apologize, but the weather doesn't impact the game on the field, obviously, but it does impact some aspects of that. Like, even if some of these guys wanted to go walk around and you can't because you're snowed in. I mean, that is part of the game here.
No, it's a great point that's not brought up. I'm thinking of a statement that I heard a betting analyst make a long time ago about the NFL in regards to the public's response, and that the most money is lost and the most wrong bets are made in week 2 of the NFL because everybody overreacts to what they saw in week 1. And yes, Ohio State is exceptional. They're reaching a ceiling, but yet, to your earlier point, to expect that precision every week might be a little bit much. And maybe Texas skated by on one of its more poor performances, right, and maybe we'll see a back to the mean for each of them. Maybe it'll be a great one.
Well, we need to see if Cam Williams is playing too. I mean, then you have Cam Williams, Kelvin Banks over JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer. Those guys have been amazing in the playoff. So that's the big matchup too. If it's 3rd and 7 and Quinn Ewers is trying to get the ball to these receivers, those 2 edge rushers against those 2 Texas tackles, that it doesn't get, for the guys that really watch football. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I do during a game. Like, I don't sit there and hyper focus on the tackle versus the edge rusher, but there are guys that do. They're really going to enjoy those matchups.
Yeah, Bill. So we talked about Penn State and Notre Dame being mirror images of each other, aside from Aller and Leonard being different type quarterbacks. How would you play that same game, Texas versus Ohio State?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Quinn Ewers is going to throw the ball down the field. He may make some mistakes, but I think Texas is more willing to live with his mistakes than when Will Howard makes a mistake. It seems like Ohio State changes their game plan on the fly. So, and he hasn't made mistakes in the playoff. He threw the one interception against Tennessee that, quite frankly, I still don't think it was an interception on that play in the back of the end zone.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to have to live with if he makes a couple mistakes in this game against a very good Texas secondary, whereas Texas is already pot committed to that. They need to, what they didn't do against Arizona State, they didn't run the ball well. If they don't have a running game to support Quinn Ewers, then those edge rushers we just talked about are going to tee off on him. So I think Texas needs to run the ball a little better in this game. They haven't run it well in 3 games this year. It was Georgia and both times in Arizona State. There, you look at the games where they run for 200 yards, they crush people. So that'll be big there. And then for Will Howard, like I said, just not how are they going to be that aggressive against a secondary that has Jahdae Barron? and Andrew Makuba and Taffy at the secondary. We shall see. When I go back to that Texas-Michigan game, when they beat Michigan, I believe, I don't have it in front of me, they ran for over 4 yards of carry in that game. They weren't like gashing Michigan, but they were running the football on them. So if they can run the football like that against Ohio State, they'll be in business. It'll be a 4-quarter game.
And that's a really good number, yards per carry against Michigan. Absolutely. If you look at the last 3 games, as you well know, the Georgia game was like 30 or 40 yards rushing. Then they hit Clemson for like 220 or 230, something, maybe more than that. And then it was back down to 53 yards, I think, against Arizona State. So I think that speaks maybe more to Clemson having its worst run defense that we've seen in forever.
They ran for 4.5 yards a carry on Michigan, but some of that was skewed by Ryan Wingo ran like a reverse for 50 yards. So, but they still had
sack yardage, maybe.
Yeah, they definitely were able to run the ball in that game. So again, that'll be a key. And Ohio State, their running game picked up in the second half against Oregon. It wasn't just as a novelty. Like Henderson and Judkins were going behind that offensive line. And it's a boring answer, Mark, but in those big games, both of these games, you follow the rushing yards. That'll take you to the win.
Yeah, and I think it takes you to the win for 2 reasons. It's not just this statement to say this team is more dominant up front and therefore they're running the ball, and that's part of moving the ball downfield, but it also shows you the flow of the game means that team then usually has the lead, therefore they can run the ball more late in the game, and that pads the rushing stats. So I think it's a combination.
Right. So, that is something that we will definitely keep an eye on in both of these games, and, in top 5 type environments. The team, I'd have to go look it up with the college football playoff. I think out of those 20 semifinals, I'm sure you would find that at least 15 to 16, that the team that had more rushing yards won the game.
Bill, we'll leave you with this. No, you got a lot on your plate for the rest of the day. I don't even know that this is a question of sorts, but I produced 2 videos. I enjoy doing these sorts of things where I looked at Ohio State, Texas, all-time numbers, rankings, major bowls, winning percentage, et cetera, pared it down post 1970, 21st century, CFP era, did the same thing, Notre Dame, Penn State. With all the pride that these fan bases have, Notre Dame, Penn State, and Texas fans don't want to hear this, but there is a substantial gap in all of those categories, even post 1970 with Ohio State versus the other 3.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, as somebody that, less Texas, I probably know less about Texas, but I spend, even as a national writer at Sporting News, it's not a secret. I probably spend most of my time as living in this part of the country writing about Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Penn State. So that makes sense. I mean, the fact that 2 of these programs haven't won national titles since the 1980s is wild to me. Notre Dame since 88, Penn State since 86. And Ohio State has been the dominant program, right? Like in the Midwest since the John Cooper era, even though they lost to Michigan, I still think they've been the dominant program. Really, as Lou Holtz in that Notre Dame era, the back half of that kind of gave way to Ohio State became that. I know Tim May and I talked about that last year. I did a decade by decade comparison of Notre Dame and Ohio State from the 80s on, and it was striking how that moved to me. Penn State's, they've been the Big Ten's third wheel for 30 years. I mean, but they've had really good teams pop in there. So this is their chance to make that statement. I know Adam Brenneman told me this week, if Penn State beats Ohio State, what a storybook finish that would be. So that's clearly who they want. Like if they could pick one to beat.
Bill, what you're getting at is there's winning a championship, and then there's also slaying a dragon or killing a demon in the process, like Red Sox Yankees 04. It wasn't like the Red Sox, got through, the Angels and the Twins in the playoffs and then won a World Series. That would have been phenomenal, but they slayed the Yankees. And this would be the same thing with Penn State.
Correct. So, definitely looking at that, and It would be good. I mean, for me, selfishly, and I've said this on a bunch of shows this week, so this will be nothing new, but being the kid that grew up in Lancaster, Ohio, went to a Catholic school for 12 years, has buddies that love both schools. I mean, Ohio State Notre Dame would be amazing for me. It would be bad for my wife because a lot of my text from my buddies will be coming in that week, and there'll be a lot of back and forth. But when you grew up around Ohio State Notre Dame fans, my son, his friend group's probably 60-40 Ohio State going to a Catholic school. It's always a fun dynamic when you grow up in Central Ohio and Ohio State and Notre Dame play. They've only played 6 times, and what a 7th one that would be.
Absolutely.
In my lifetime, I know they've played more than 6 times, but since I've been alive, those 6 games were events, and I can't wait. Hope to see another one.
It's funny, real quick, Bill, because when they signed that series to play in 1995-96, I was in college. It was around it was when Notre Dame was, national champions and battling Miami, and Ohio State was down. Obviously, it was the beginning of the Cooper era. I remember going to college with some Notre Dame fans, and it just, at the time that contract was signed, it was like, oh, Notre Dame, we're going to kill you. We're going to kill Ohio State. This won't even be, a lot of things change in 6 or 7 years. So we know what happened in 95 and 96.
Oh, yeah. So I think, I remember the build up to those games. I was in high school, the build up to the 2 Fiesta Bowls, the one probably less, because that one where Ezekiel Elliott and Joey Bosa, that was kind of, I don't want to say a consolation game for Ohio State, but it felt different than that other Fiesta Bowl with Brady Quinn and AJ Hawk. And then, of course, the last 2 have been awesome. Last year's was amazing. That was the best one. So I think if we could get a rematch, and the stories will write themselves. I know we can talk about that next week, but that is my preferred as a writer, if I could take the writer hat off for 5 minutes and just be a college football fan, that would be the one I would pick.
Bill, it is great to see you, and always a great conversation, sir.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
Bill Bender, Sporting News. Get there. Follow Bill on X, and then you can follow him to all of his work. We will take the 2 calls that we have on the line here at the Voice of College Football. Let's start it off with our guy, Michael. We've got a little graphics issue. Let's do that first. Please subscribe. Please like the video. It's an easy thing to do. Just like the video while you're here. What that does is that tells YouTube that you, wait for it, like the video, that you like the video. Therefore, they're guessing other people will like this video. So this is the deal. Let's say 1,000 people watch this live stream. Hopefully more than that, because we're not going to survive with 1,000 views on live streams. But that's another story for another time. Let's say 1,000 people watch this live stream. Okay. If nobody likes it, nobody engages with it, whether in the live chat or later in the comment section, nobody likes it, nothing, then YouTube's going to rank it a certain way. They're basically going to say, well, the people in Mark's community didn't like this video, didn't like this live stream. We're not sending it anywhere. Same thing with the videos. It more so with the recorded videos that you see, even more so than the live streams. But 1,000 people watch it, and they watch for a long time, and they like it. I get 500 likes, and I get a ton of comments, 200 comments, let's say something like that. Then YouTube says, Mark's people like it, other people will like it, and they throw it out into traffic. And that's when more people like it. Michigan, Alabama post game. Check out that video, even though that seems like it was 100 years ago. The ReliaQuest Bowl instant analysis, Michigan and Alabama, 22,000 views. Okay, we should have videos on here every day that do 22,000 views. That should be a norm. It should not be a big deal. 22,000 views on a video. What happened there? Well, I got Michigan fans here. They watched the video. Then YouTube sent it out to more people, and they liked it, and they kept watching and watching and watching. If you see my video views on this channel, they go like this. They're all over the place. I do not have consistent viewership. So we need to fix that. So in the meantime, while I'm searching for things to post that you like, we'll play this game. Just watch the video, just let it roll. Even if you don't even care about the topic. If enjoy what we do here at the Voice of College Football. And even if you don't really care what we do here on the main channel, but you like the other team channels, guess what? It all comes back to me. So even if you don't even see me on these team channels, Georgia channel, Michigan channel, whatever channel, guess who runs it? I do. So it all comes back here. So we need a strong and thriving and healthy main channel. And so, I don't know, let the video roll, give it a like, do all those good things. We appreciate that. All right. I have a 1 o'clock meeting. Therefore, we're taking these 2 calls. Michael, what's going on today?
Okay, I'll make this fast and
You're
brief.
fine. You're fine.
All right. I gotta ask: is Penn State gonna load a box tonight and have a QB spy on Leonard the whole game?
They should. Absolutely, they should. You know, the biggest offensive play Notre Dame had was Riley Leonard making a great read on a read option play and keeping the ball and just gashing Georgia for like 50 yards down the field, because otherwise, as you well know, Notre Dame just scored on a slant pass after a turnover, a 13-yard drive, and then they had a kickoff return for a touchdown. Otherwise, the offense didn't do much. The 2 running backs, for as good as they are, did next to nothing.
Well, Love was somewhat hurt though, wasn't he?
Yes, he is somewhat hurt, had the flu against Indiana, and then I don't know what else is exactly wrong with him. But yeah, that's a big question right there. Exactly.
Yeah, my other thing is, do you think the de facto national championship game is tomorrow night?
No, I do not. This is not Ohio State and Georgia in 2022.
You mean Alabama and Georgia in 2022?
No, Ohio State and Georgia in 2022, de facto.
No, what I mean by de facto is whoever wins that game tomorrow night is going to most likely win the national championship.
I know. That's what I meant about Ohio State and Georgia in 2022.
Okay.
Anyway, this is not the de facto national championship. Notre Dame can win a national championship. I've got less confidence in Penn State, but they can win a national championship. All 4 of these teams are in play, I believe.
Now, do you think that Sark will sit in the kitchen sink tomorrow to try to force Leonard into turnovers? And maybe
Sark meaning Will Howard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sark. And then but how are you going to try to do that with Smith, because he is a beast?
Yeah, you're not sending the no. Why and I'll credit Steve Dace for this comment, but it's a pretty obvious one. Why would Texas, especially with a very similar 3 levels of defense in a lot of ways, look at the Michigan game and really, and I know Ohio State's hopefully not going to game plan as stupidly as they did against Michigan, but first of all, bracket Jeremiah Smith, make somebody else beat you. Now, Ohio State's different than most teams in that they've got 4 other guys that can beat you, but you might as well at least force their hand and bracket Jeremiah Smith, start there. And I would not be concerned. If I was Texas, for as good as Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson are, the Ohio State as a run blocking unit is severely compromised health-wise. I would not be concerned with the running back run.
No,
that
what
would
I'm
not
saying,
be my main concern.
No, what I'm saying is like in situations and stuff like that when they're going to have to throw the ball.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, because we know the Ohio State offensive line is the best, and their pass blocking isn't really that good, in my opinion.
No, their pass blocking's good.
Do what?
Their pass blocking is fine. It has been extremely good.
But haven't the team been able to force Howard to do mistakes and stuff this year?
Well, let's understand that every team gives up pass rush plays. Like no pass blocking line is perfect. So that's the first thing. Everybody's going to rush the quarterback and pressure the quarterback at some point in a game. It's just how frequently and how severely you get to the quarterback. And Ohio State's pass blocking through all these offensive line woes, that's been run blocking issue related. The pass blocking has been, I think, extraordinary.
It looked like to me in the Michigan game, and I could be wrong, that they had pretty much Michigan was able to do what they wanted to with the pass when they, excuse me, in that situations.
Well, maybe the very last drive of the game when it was obvious Ohio State had to throw and they only had like 40 seconds left in the game. But besides that, Will Howard had time to, he didn't get sacked for one thing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. He don't have to get sacked, but like the amount of the pressures and the QB hits and stuff like that.
I know,
But
but
another
I'm
thing,
just saying Will Howard did not get sacked against Michigan, and the pass protection was the least of Ohio State's issues in that game.
And do you think Manning might play? Do you think they'll go 50-50 tomorrow with you or Zane Manning? Just to mix it up?
50-50?
Well, not maybe 50-50, maybe like
No.
throw it to where Manning will get some plays tomorrow.
Oh, we'll get some plays. Most of his plays are going to come inside the 10-yard line. Why would Sark and Texas do anything different than what they've done in the past? Quinn Ewers is not Texas's problem. Run blocking is Texas's problem. They ran for 50 yards against Arizona State. They ran for 30 yards against Georgia 2 weeks earlier. They can't run the ball against stout defenses.
So basically, they both have an issue with the run game, I see.
Well, this Ohio State's run game's been better than Georgia's or Texas's, but not a lot better. Ohio State suffers from when they've played good defenses, Nebraska, Michigan, etc. Michigan, a bit of a different deal. They really didn't run the ball at all against Michigan, other than like 2 runs.
Yeah.
0, -1, 3, -1, 1, 2, 22, and then back down 0.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of 7s and 9s and 6s. But against Oregon, they finally ran the ball pretty consistently.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering stuff like, all right, I know you got me coming up in a couple other calls. See you around 11:30 or 11:45 tonight.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael.
All right, see you. Have a good one.
You too. Our buddy Michael coming up on our buddy Chris, and we appreciate all the good people in the chat here. Rob's here. Cheryl's here. Always just have to underline that, put it in bold, exclamation marks. Cheryl's here. D-Rock Irish, we appreciate you, Wet Blanket, and everyone. All right. Chris showing up. Chris, what's going on today?
Oh, hi, Mark. How are you?
I am doing just fine.
You said the 2022 Peach Bowl was the title game. I see that doesn't make sense to me, Mark, because Texas Christian, they had to advance to play Georgia. I know that the game was a lopsided win and all that, but I'm just being a little nitpicky. But
well, you're correct. The technical national championship game in 22 was TCU against Georgia. We all know that. We're talking about a de facto, just like the question posed from Michael. Michael clearly knows that the national championship game is not Friday night, Texas, Ohio State. He's just making the point and asking the question, is that truly, are those truly, like you can remember back in the 1980s into the early 90s when the NFC championship game, many times people looked at it as the Super Bowl when Dallas would play San Francisco, and it was like the winner of this game is going to win the Super Bowl. Those kind of matchups. That's the only point he was trying to make.
I hope you understand where I'm coming from. I'm not necessarily calling you out on anything. I know where you're coming from on the whole thing. And in fact, I'm not sure I entirely disagree even with that statement. It's just that, it kind of puts TCU in a difficult, I mean, they did do what they had to do to get there, I guess. Now, when they got there, I guess we can argue about whether they really showed up or not. That was kind of disappointing, I think, for a lot of people, but that's not why I was calling. But anyway, give them credit. With people that tend to point at that game, I don't hope they're trying to take something away from them is the only thing. I think they don't really maybe understand how hard it is to get there, sort of thing. But anyway, I know what you're saying. I'm not saying you're wrong either. I think it had been between Ohio State and Texas Christian. I don't know that there would have been pretty sure Ohio State would have won that pretty easily. But anyway, so I'm not disputing you at all. But the only other question I might have though is with this playoff, and I know there's been other issues with it so far and things that I didn't really foresee. The seating isn't really what bothers me. It's they actually, I think, did the best they could with it. But now these teams that were given a bye, seemed like it took Boise State a half to warm up or whatever. And I don't know if it was that way with the other 3 teams or not, but and then I don't know that it changed the outcome at all. But I kind of wonder though a little bit, just because, and this is what I was having in mind. I don't know if you like this idea or not, but just a suggestion, I guess. With the seedings, what do you think of the idea, for example, like this year? I know Oregon got beat, so we can kind of eliminate them, I guess. But, they won the Big Ten. So what do you think of the idea of like maybe having 2 teams in the top 4 seeded, and then the other, what would it be? The other 4 conference, is it the other 4? Anyway, what I'm trying to tell you is there might be a way to seed these teams without like giving preference to the team itself. So like Oregon and maybe, I guess it was Georgia in the SEC, but I was kind of thinking maybe Notre Dame because they, almost went undefeated. What do you think about maybe putting them in the top 2, the semifinal or quarterfinal, and then the other 4 seeded teams maybe in a 8-team bracket sort of thing, where the 4 teams that advance play the top 2 seeds? What do you think of that idea? Do you like it?
Okay, I didn't quite follow that. You want a 6-team playoff and 2 teams have buys?
No. Well, I guess I didn't explain it too clearly, but no, I think I would keep it either at 8 or 12, but the first 8 teams, I guess you have, because they, how they're kind of giving predilection, I guess, to the conference teams that are the better teams. They're trying to give them a home field advantage, I guess. I don't know that the whole thing with the playoffs, Mark, is that I think they're going to have to eventually move away from the bowl tie-in. I just don't think that that's smart. I don't know if you agree with me on that, but if you're going to have the playoff, I don't know. You can't really. It's kind of like you're saying with the Peach Bowl. It's like it's not really the Peach Bowl if it's not the 2 teams that you think should. So I think they're going to have to kind of do something about that too. I don't know that you can just say because it's 2 teams that want to play in the Orange Bowl or whatever that all of a sudden that becomes the Orange Bowl. To me, that doesn't really make sense. But
You
anyway,
might be shocked, Chris, but I actually agree with you, but maybe not necessarily for the exact reason, but I do agree with that line of thinking.
well, that's why I was asking about the other part where. So we had 2 good teams, like I said, Notre Dame or in my opinion, you might not agree with my opinion, but that I kind of think maybe should have gotten to the quarterfinals, I guess, or to where they host a game, sort of thing, to where maybe Oregon isn't necessarily at a disadvantage, maybe as much as they might have been. I know I'm not trying to make it like that Ohio State didn't deserve the win. I know they did. They earned the win. They were up 34-0, I think. I don't know how much more they could have done, but anyway, the one thing I might tell you though, you might not like this, because they scored 21. It actually kind of cut into the, what do you call it? I have my own way of doing it where if you win by 21, that's like an extra point you get or whatever. But I know that probably doesn't fit with what you think. But the fact they only won by 20 kind of means that it wasn't as dominating, even though they were ahead 34-0. But
So
regardless,
your system differentiates between a 21-point win and
well, I
a
could tell you why.
20-point win.
I could tell you why, but you're probably not going to. You always get on me for doing it because then you say, well, nobody wants to hear about it. But yeah, because in 1984, LSU tied Florida 21-21. I mean, that's what I use. It's like so to kind of counteract that, you can, if you win by 21, that's kind of saying you were not only better, you were a lot better. And if you can win by even more than that, then it makes it the game to where it counts double, I guess, if you win by 21. And now it would have if they hadn't kept Oregon from scoring 21. I know the game was already in hand and maybe they didn't really think about it. They weren't aware of it either. But
the justification of you choosing the number 21 to make a differentiation is about as valid as me saying my daughter's 26 years old and I love her. Therefore, I'm going to make 26 points the magic number of what a blowout is.
I know what you're trying to tell me, Mark, and I know you're a smart guy, and I appreciate the fact that you kind of find the faults in my systems regardless of how I come about it, but I didn't throw that up in the air and just catch it. 21. No. The 21 was actually something that came as a result of, it was because those teams tied 21-21, but to get 21 means you have to put it to your opponent to some extent. So that means even though you don't like the fact that Oregon scored 21 on you, I mean, to some extent, they actually kind of rallied. It's kind of what that means. Now whether or not 21 should be the defining factor or not, I don't know. But I'm not just throwing that up in the air and saying, okay, I'm going to make it 21. No, I had that in setup before this ever happened. So basically, Ohio State, by not, I guess at the end when they didn't kick a field goal or whatever, what I'm trying to tell you is I think Oregon should still be in the chase. I don't know, they beat Penn State. To my opinion, they should probably still be in the chase, with pending another loss, obviously. But, I don't understand why Penn State advances and, when they beat Penn State. Now, I don't want to get into all this line of arguments about it because those things go nowhere. But that's where I think the playoff has another issue, though, is, a team that lost one game now is at the behest of one.
I don't have a whole lot of time. Actually, I'm missing a 1:00 meeting that I need to get to. But let me just say something that I don't agree with you, Chris, but I actually understand your logic. You're basically saying Oregon was the only undefeated team in the country. Therefore, this is simply their first loss. Therefore, why do they get eliminated? Why isn't this just considered a loss and they get to continue to play?
Until they lose again.
Yes.
Yeah,
I understand your logic, but this is a playoff. So teams qualify for a playoff, and then once that's determined, their records during the season are discarded and they start playing fresh.
Well, I guess all I'm getting at, Mark, and I don't want to cut into your appointment, but that's something they need to address moving forward, is all I'm trying to say. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know why
that's not going to be addressed.
I don't know why Penn State would advance if you lose a championship game to a team that doesn't. You know what I mean? To me, that doesn't make sense. What if Penn State wins the whole thing?
I get your point.
There's not going to be anybody at Oregon saying anything. Oh, that's good. That's cool. I don't know. They might be saying, well, wait a minute. We beat Penn State. What do we got to do?
Two separate entities, the regular season and the playoffs. The regular season, we determine who advances from the regular season and if they're given any kind of advantage or preference based on how well they played. And then once the playoffs start, everybody has a 0-0 record.
Well, that's my issue with it, though. That's kind of why I brought it up.
And I understand that. I get it, because you're treating every game equally, but that's not the way it's set up.
I understand that too, Mark. I just think that Oregon should be in there instead of either Penn State or maybe even Texas.
Okay.
Just
Thanks for the call, Chris. I appreciate it.
Bye, Mark.
Sorry, I can't take any more calls. I am 7 minutes late for a meeting and for something very important here at the Voice of College Football. So do appreciate you stopping by. I will be here after Penn State and Notre Dame go to double zeros immediately following the game. Give me a call. I'll be here. We'll see you then.